It is a Spike Lee film, but the screenplay was actually written by two Jewish screenplay writers. And I assume it's their invention to place a Jewish character into the story that originally didn't have a Jewish character in it. The basic idea, of course, in Colorado Springs Police Department is an African-American officer who finds a way to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. It's a remarkable story. It seems almost ridiculous, but it actually happened. But in the film, there's this decision to use as the sort of the plant in the Klan a white character who is Jewish. So this really goes to something of this notion of what's called by sociologists now intersectionality. Can you talk about that a little bit generally and what you think is happening in the film to help understand that concept?
And by intersectionality, are we talking about the sort of bifurcation that happens where people have to live one part of their life?
Right. So there's this notion of intersectionality is a concept that seems to be more and more in racial studies and in social studies, where we are coming to recognize that our identities have a kind of certain privilege in certain areas, but maybe not in other areas. And so, for example, an African-American male might have a sense of living with racial oppression on the one hand, but having a kind of privilege, on the other hand, over African-American females, say, for instance, or some such thing. So here we have a Jewish character who, on the one hand, has this privilege as a white character, but now set in this setting with the Klan, is sort of alerted to his Jewishness and the fact that he's struggling with that identity that he hadn't struggled with before he gets in this. So here we are. In other words, I think the whole concept is, no matter where you are in the social system, you are never one thing or another. I mean, even if you are a white Protestant person in America, there is a sense that you might have suffered abuse in your home growing up, or you might have been working class, or something of that nature. So we're coming to understand that we should all pay attention, both to our privilege, but also to the ways that we can be sensitive to other people's struggles as well.
I think that was one of the great creative decisions. And I did have the privilege of interviewing David Rabinowitz, who was one of the two original writers working with Ron Stallworth on adapting his memoir. And there's a long and really interesting story attached to that. Ron basically trusted these guys who had never had a movie made, didn't sign a contract, and just said, if we ever get to this place, that would be awesome. And then they finished their screenplay, which did include that character of Philip or Flip. And sent it to Jordan Peele, the director of Get Out. And he said, I know exactly who needs to make this movie, and put it in the hands of Spike Lee. But David and his partner created this character who is at this intersection of being treated in a certain way if he embraces this piece of his identity, and treated in a certain way because he's never had to think about his identity. But what the members of the Klan, particularly this really terrifying character named Felix, keeps bringing up, keeps confronting him about if he's Jewish. And he literally is having to deny.
3 times maybe?
Probably so. And so, as he says in the movie, when the character of Ron, who's played by Denzel Washington's son, confronts him and says, why are you acting like you don't have skin in the game? You're Jewish. And he, during the course of the movie, begins to realize that he has done this thing that some of the African American folks in our conversation this morning were saying, talking about passing. If you're a light-skinned black person, you can pass and not have to deal with this part of your identity where you'll be held down and looked down on. And so it's a really brilliant thing that they've done in the movie, but what I think the movie ends up doing with the character of Flip is he becomes fully himself.
Yes.
Because he's able to embrace that part of himself that he's denied for so long.
Right.
And it actually takes him not to this place of prejudice, which is not to say that he will not be subjected to anti-Semitism if he embraces it fully, but to this place where he realizes that the wisdom and the ritual that he has lost because he has not embraced that part of himself is an important thing that he wants for himself. It's a really lovely movie, and Spike Lee doesn't often do a storyline about religion, but this is a really important storyline about faith.